According to ESPN insider Adam Schefter, the NFL trade market is heating up fast. And yes, the Raiders are right in the middle of it. Schefter listed 33 players who could be on the move before the trade deadline on November 4th, and only one Raider made that list, Jakobi Meyers. Now, Meyers has been a solid performer, but the Raiders' current record, 2 wins and 4 losses, raises tough questions. Fans can feel it. The energy is off, the locker room seems uncertain, and even after wins, the mood feels defeated. Some players are quietly wondering about the direction of the team and the decisions of the coaching staff. And when a team feels lost, trade talks become louder. Let's not forget, Meyers himself requested a trade earlier this offseason, right before the season kicked off. It's no secret he was looking for a fresh start and possibly a new contract. Now, with the Raiders struggling, that door might open again. A single win against Kansas City could flip the narrative, but until that happens, the reality is clear. The Raiders might become sellers before the deadline. Because when pressure builds in Vegas, something always breaks. Jakobi Meyers' situation in Las Vegas is turning into a high-stakes gamble, one that could define the Raiders' future. He's playing in a contract year, and everyone knows what that means: tension, pressure, and uncertainty. Sources close to the team say Meyers and his agent wanted a big deal, somewhere north of $18 million a year, but the Raiders didn't bite. The front office stood firm, refusing to meet his number. Behind the scenes, frustration grew. Meyers had already hinted at wanting a trade earlier this offseason, and things didn't get any smoother from there. People inside the building felt uneasy about how the talks were handled. The trust, once strong, began to crack. Then came the 2025 NFL Draft. The Raiders picked up 2 new receivers, Jack Beck and Dante Thornton Jr. They haven't made much noise yet, but the message from management was loud and clear. The team is preparing for life after Meyers. That's the kind of move that speaks louder than any press conference. It says, "We're planning ahead, with or without him." Now the Raiders are staring at a tough call. Keep their veteran wideout, or deal him before the deadline. If another team puts a third-round pick or better on the table, Meyers might be packing his bags. But if no one steps up with that kind of offer, the Raiders could decide to hold him, at least until the offseason. There's a lot at stake here. Without Meyers, the offense could take a major hit, especially if Brock Bowers isn't fully healthy yet. Geno Smith and new offensive coordinator Chip Kelly are trying to build chemistry and rhythm, and losing a key receiver could slow everything down. The Raiders are walking a tightrope, balancing money, loyalty, and performance in a season where every decision counts. Because in Las Vegas, one wrong bet can cost you everything. The Raiders made their biggest bets this offseason, and they weren't on slot machines. They invested heavily in Geno Smith and Chip Kelly, believing this duo could finally spark a true offensive identity in Las Vegas. That's why trading away Jakobi Meyers, the team's most reliable target, doesn't seem to make much sense, at least not yet. Meyers is the safety net for Geno, the rhythm setter for Kelly's new system. Losing him could mean starting over halfway through the season. But here's the twist: money and logic don't always align in the NFL. The Raiders could choose to keep Meyers, not only for his impact on the field but because of how the compensatory pick rules work. If Meyers leaves in free agency and signs a big deal elsewhere in 2026, Las Vegas could receive a 4th-round compensatory pick in return. So why rush into a mid-season trade for the same value they could get later, especially when that trade could weaken the offense right now? Still, nothing is guaranteed. Several teams across the league are eyeing Meyers closely. Inside reports suggest that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have already reached out to the Raiders about a possible deal. Other teams, like the 49ers, Rams, and Jaguars, are also believed to be monitoring the situation quietly. It makes sense. Meyers is the kind of player any franchise would want: reliable hands, sharp routes, and a calm presence in tight games. But in Las Vegas, every decision feels like a coin flip. Keep him, and you preserve your chemistry. Trade him, and you gain flexibility, but risk losing your offensive balance. As the trade deadline creeps closer, the question becomes clear: will the Raiders double down on what they built, or cash out before the clock hits zero? While most of Raider Nation is watching the trade rumors swirl, the front office made a quiet but interesting move earlier today. The Raiders have signed guard McClendon Curtis to their practice squad, and this might be more than just a routine roster adjustment. Curtis, a former undrafted lineman with solid experience from his time in Seattle, brings size, power, and a strong work ethic. He's not a household name yet, but the Raiders have kept an eye on him since his college days. Now, he's back in silver and black, and that could mean something. For now, it's just a practice squad move. But don't be surprised if Curtis finds his way onto the active roster in the coming weeks. He fits the kind of lineman profile the Raiders staff seems to love: tough, disciplined, and ready to fight for every snap. This signing also raises questions about Dylan Parham's future. His name has quietly surfaced in trade discussions, and when a team starts bringing in depth at your position, that's never a random coincidence. With players like Alex Kappa holding down key interior roles and Curtis now added for depth, Parham could become a legitimate trade piece before the deadline. The Raiders' strategy seems clear: build the trenches, keep flexibility, and prepare for any scenario. Whether that means strengthening the offensive line for a late-season push or setting up future moves, one thing is certain: the silver and black aren't standing still. They're quietly reshuffling the deck, and something bigger might be coming next. So far, all the noise has been about who the Raiders might trade away, but what if the real story is about who they might bring in? According to Adam Schefter, more than 30 players across the league could be on the move before the deadline. And while not all of them fit the Raiders' needs, a few names stand out: players who could quietly become part of a bigger rebuild in Las Vegas. Let's start with the offense. Schefter's list includes several quarterbacks, running backs, and a handful of wide receivers, mostly from struggling teams looking to offload contracts. But the truth is, the Raiders' offense isn't crying out for more stars right now. What it really needs is stability, especially in the trenches. The Raiders have spent months developing this offensive line with the same core group. They've built chemistry, timing, and trust, and that's not something you replace overnight. Unless a perfect deal comes along, it's unlikely they'll shake up that foundation. Now, flip to the defensive side, where things get more interesting. The team has been inconsistent, flashes of brilliance followed by breakdowns in the secondary. That's where reinforcements could come in. A cheap, smart trade for a cornerback or safety would make far more sense than a blockbuster move. People inside the Raiders organization, from John Speicher to Chip Kelly, have made it clear they value the trenches. But this time, it's not just about strength up front. It's about balance, tightening up coverage, adding depth, and finding players who fit the system without breaking the bank. Realistically, don't expect the Raiders to go all in with a massive deal. The franchise is more likely to target low-cost, high-impact players, the kind that strengthen weak spots without draining future assets. Because in Las Vegas, smart moves, not flashy ones, build long-term success. And as the trade deadline creeps closer, Raider Nation waits to see whether the team will buy, sell, or surprise everyone in between. Coming up next, we're diving straight into the top 5 players the Las Vegas Raiders could realistically trade for. And trust me, number 1 on this list will surprise you. But before we jump into the latest updates, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and don't forget to press the bell icon, so you never miss breaking Raiders news. Alright, let's get into it. At number 5, we've got Tyler Lockett. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why on earth would the Raiders even look at Lockett? Here's the thing: if the team decides to move on from Jakobi Meyers, they'll still need a veteran receiver to balance out the offense. And that's where Lockett fits in. He's experienced, reliable, and one of the best route runners in the league. Plus, the Raiders have already been linked with other veteran targets like Amari Cooper, so a move for Lockett wouldn't be shocking. The chemistry and leadership he brings could also help younger wideouts develop faster, something this team really needs. Now, let's move to the next potential target, Anfernee Jennings, the linebacker/edge rusher from the Patriots. If New England shows interest in Jakobi Meyers, a swap involving Jennings and some draft capital could make sense. But here's the truth, the Raiders don't just need players, they need picks. Building long-term success starts with stacking draft value. If a deal happens, it needs to help the team's future, not just fill temporary gaps. Next up, let's talk about Kyle Dugger, a name that keeps floating around trade rumors. The Raiders' defense has struggled with consistency in the secondary, and it's becoming more obvious every week that they need a true difference maker at safety. Watching Isaiah Pola-Mao get burned in coverage over and over again makes it clear Las Vegas needs help, fast. That's where Dugger comes in. He's athletic, aggressive, and versatile enough to thrive in three safety formations, something the Raiders' defense loves to use. And remember, Las Vegas already showed interest in Dugger earlier this offseason. With uncertainty around Lonnie Johnson Jr.'s return, circling back to Dugger could make perfect sense.